Pacquiao retire based on the loss to Ugas. Personally, my opinion is, I think Pacquiao should definitely retire. Obviously, you guys are going to let me know your thoughts and opinions, but listen, whatever Manny decides to do, I think true fans will support his decision. I'll still support him, whatever he does. So I wanted to kind of get everything out that's on my mind in this video today, so just bear with me because I didn't plan this and there's quite a lot of things that I want to cover. So, you know, the first thing I want to go into, I always remember Freddie Roach saying, and he said it recently, Freddie Roach made a promise. He said that when the time came where he saw Pacquiao slow down, he would tell him it's time to retire. So he kind of made a strong point of saying that, you know, once he saw Manny slowing down or, you know, losing his position in his prime, he would no longer train him anymore for fights, obviously, because he cares about him. The relationship goes far beyond just a financial relationship with, you know, with Pacquiao obviously paying him taking a percentage. And I honestly think now is a time where Freddie Roach, obviously, this is my opinion, right? They're going to do what they're going to do. He needs to be honest with Pacquiao, as difficult as that conversation is probably going to be, and say, look, it's time now. Now, Pacquiao, like I've said before, for me, is the greatest. Some people won't agree that he's the greatest of all time, but most people will definitely agree, you know, top 10, top 5 greatest fighters of all time in any era, sorry. And that's just based alone on, without looking at who he fought, how exciting he was, his achievements. So if anyone ever tries to say, well, can you qualify that statement, because I don't agree on it, I will qualify it straight away by saying an 8-weight world champion. Who's done that in boxing history? Name me one fighter in any era, in any weight division, who has been an 8-weight world champion. Nobody so far. So that alone cements Pacquiao's place in history, regardless of any criticism, of any losses. Him losing to Ugas the other night doesn't do anything to tarnish or dent or discredit or devalue what that man's achieved. Pacquiao could go and lose 10 fights more, and what he done is forever. People are going to talk about Pacquiao long after we're off this planet. The man's unbelievable. So I just wanted to make a point of saying that. Now, I want to go into my own opinions of the fight, what I saw, and I mean, a lot of us are going to say this, but there's probably not many bigger Pacquiao fans than me. That's the first time I've ever watched a fight of Pacquiao where I genuinely felt he's losing this fight. You know, he was losing the fight pretty early on. I thought he won the first round. I thought the second round was close. I'd probably give it to Ugas. But, you know, third, fourth, fifth, Ugas started running off with the fight. So Ugas won that fight. But looking at the positives, and there's always positives to look at, especially with Pacquiao, Pacquiao gave a great account of himself, considering the circumstances being that he's almost 43. Ugas was a late replacement. That's going to be challenging for anyone. You know, he was signed to fight Errol Spence. They've been training for weeks. 1 week out of the fight, obviously, unfortunately, Errol Spence gets an injury, right? Gets an injury. That's just unfortunate. Ugas is a last-minute replacement, but Ugas isn't a replacement, you know, in normal terms in boxing, where they get a journeyman in or someone who is a decent fighter. Ugas was already preparing for a fight on the Manny Pacquiao undercard. So Ugas was in fantastic shape. So it wasn't like Pacquiao was going to have any kind of advantages. But going into the fight, I thought Pacquiao was going to destroy him. But that's based on me not knowing that much about Ugas. Obviously, I know that he's from a Cuban background, which means you're always going to have a great foundation, because I know Cuba are renowned for brilliant boxers, especially in the amateurs. And I heard, you know, through the grapevine that he lost to Sean Porter, but a lot of people think that he won that fight. He didn't get the decision. Then I looked at some of the clips So with all that said, you've got to give Ugas credit. I was surprised. I got to be honest. I didn't think it was going to be easy, but I was concerned about the size difference. Ugas was a lot bigger than Manny. He looked like a weight division above, maybe two. But obviously, throughout Manny's career, this is one of the other ingredients which makes him, for me, the greatest of all time, or one of the greatest of all time. Pacquiao has been beating guys that are bigger than him way back at the start of his career. And for most of us will admit, it feels like Pacquiao has been around forever. It feels like he's had 4 careers in one, because I think he's reigned for 4 decades, 26-year career. So Ugas just boxed a very strategic, intelligent fight. Now, I know they're completely different, but I honestly thought the methodology, the way in Ugas went about that fight, or maybe his trainer, Ismail Salas' team, was quite similar to Floyd Mayweather. Now, obviously, Mayweather, for me, was even more careful than Ugas. Ugas was willing to trade in the exchanges with Manny, which surprised me and impressed me. But the jab won the fight. That's what cost Manny Pacquiao the fight. And this are the signs for me that it's time to retire. That brilliant performance that Pacquiao had against Furman, which for me, like, his legacy was here, right? Which is just unbelievable. And like, you can't beat it. Beating Furman at 40 years of age in the manner in which he won that fight, bearing in mind that Furman was undefeated going into that fight. Furman's no joke. He was a top welterweight. He's a brilliant boxer. Age 30, Pacquiao's got 10 years over him, and Pacquiao put him down in the first round, nearly put him out in the 10th round with that body shot. And it was a brutal fight. You know, Pacquiao took quite a lot of punishment towards the end of the fight, but Pacquiao won it. There's just so many positives. So you can't knock Pacquiao. You can't do it. But for me, at the same time, I don't want to see Pacquiao go on and get beaten by fighters that he would have never lost to in his prime. So can't knock Ugas. Ugas is a gentleman, nothing but good things to say, but we're just speaking facts here. It's very unlikely that Ugas wouldn't have been able to live with Pacquiao in his prime. Or the Pacquiao, for me, that beat Keith Thurman, Ugas wouldn't have been able to beat that Pacquiao. So there's been a big change. I noticed it weren't the same Pacquiao Saturday night. But, you know, having said that, it was still a brilliant effort. Pacquiao gave every ounce of his heart from round 1 to 12. He never stopped trying to win that fight. You know, he still has, and it's amazing. He threw 800 punches, 800 punches to Ugas's 400. And those statistics are just unbelievable, but he still lost the fight because a lot of the shots that Pacquiao was throwing, those beautiful combinations, those signature Pacquiao combinations, they weren't landing. Maybe 1 or 2 would land, and he was getting hit with big shots. You know, Ugas was hitting him with stiff jabs, stiff right hands, and that crazy shot kind of over the top, which caught Pacquiao quite a few times, and obviously Pacquiao figured it out and started keeping his hands up. But I didn't like the punishment Pacquiao took in that fight. For me, that was worrying. I don't want to see him get hurt. He's a legend. He's got nothing to prove. I mean, everyone's saying that at the moment. Pacquiao's got nothing to prove. Maybe to himself, but not to, you know, fans. And let's be honest, most fans are selfish. Like, I generally would never want to see Pacquiao get hurt. There's a lot of fans can be very selfish. That's where the term fanatic comes from. They just want to keep seeing Pacquiao fighting and fighting regardless of how he's going to end up. So I don't want to see Pacquiao punch drunk. I don't want to see people saying, oh, he used to be the legend and then getting beaten. No, he's better than that, man. Pacquiao's on to bigger and greater things, and I honestly feel, he said it himself, Pacquiao's calling in life now is his faith, and it's serving humanity. Obviously, especially his country, of the Philippines. You can see it now. That's his next chapter. And what's wrong with that? It's incredible. Most boxers are not fortunate to have that. So Pacquiao can go off into the sunset and he can help his people. A lot of people are saying he can become the president of the Philippines, and I mean, that is just an unbelievable story. You know, a guy that come from really piss poor poverty, growing up on the street, starving, being in starvation, having to, I heard he had to sell cigarettes or donuts, having to fight and getting paid a pittance just to earn a little bit of money to feed him and his mum, his family. His story's incredible. Alone, coming from that to being a world champion, coming over to the States, you know, fighting legends like Marco Antonio Barrera, beating Barrera, beating Labada, the South African champion, then fighting Eric Morales, having a trilogy of him, losing a fight, winning two, the fights of Marquez. You know, he was a legend years ago. So what's Pacquiao going to gain out of fighting more? And I personally wouldn't like to see him fight Errol Spence or Crawford. And it's hard to say this, but based on what we've seen against Ugas, he's not going to beat those guys. But he doesn't need to beat them. He's already, for me, the greatest based on what he achieved, how he did. Pacquiao didn't duck anyone. You can't say that about every fighter. Obviously, respect to any fighter who gets in the ring. I know how difficult it is. I gave it a try. But most people have never even had a fight in their life, let alone been in the ring or even done a hard sparring session. So fans will have their criticism and this and that, but at the end of the day, Pacquiao's achievements are just, even remarkable is an understatement. Brilliant, fantastic, phenomenal. It's just, it's unbelievable what he's achieved and how he's done it, being that he's a smaller man. He's always been at a disadvantage, and that's why we love him. We love him because he fights the best. We love him because he's an honest fighter. He fights with his heart on his sleeve. He's ferocious. He doesn't make too many excuses when he loses. He doesn't put anybody down. He doesn't trash talk. He's respectful. He's a fine example. Now, even losing, he still lost in style. He's brilliant. He didn't embarrass himself on Saturday night. He didn't get disgraced. It's proof. Look at Ugas's face. His face is beat up, and obviously Ugas beat up Pacquiao's face. They've both got, you know, black eyes. They were in a fight. So although Pacquiao lost that fight, and Ugas clearly won it, it was a close fight though, without contradicting myself. It was one of those fights that Pacquiao was in that fight. And obviously, I wouldn't have given the fight to Pacquiao, but I could see why judges could have given that fight to Pacquiao, because he threw 800 punches, Ugas threw 400. But the quality work come from Ugas, and Pacquiao, even though his hands were fast, his footwork, I've never seen Pacquiao stand so flat-footed and planted in front and take so many heavy shots. That's not the Pacquiao that we know, and we shouldn't expect it. He's expected to not be what he used to be. He's going to be 43. So I think enough is enough, and I think if his team are honest and they really care about him around him, they'll say enough. Because you can always make an argument for one more. And you know, if you just look at that performance and we don't take in consideration Pacquiao's age and how long he's been reigning, it's very easy to say Pacquiao can go again, and he probably can go again. He can compete with the best, but I just don't think he can beat. I don't think he's good enough at this moment in time to beat Errol Spence or Crawford. And it's not easy for me to say that because I love Pacquiao. But would he have beaten those guys in his prime? 100%. They wouldn't have been able to live with him. He would have hurt them bad. But he's not in his prime anymore. And I think, although that performance with Furman was flawless, there were signs of decline in that fight. But the signs were so subtle and small that we didn't really see them, or maybe we didn't want to see them because his attributes outweighed those subtle signs. And one of the signs I'm going to say that I personally noticed in the Furman fight, Pacquiao was getting hit with big shots too much, too consistently for my liking. And the Pacquiao that fought Cotto and Hatton was so quick, it was flawless, man. It wasn't easy to hit flush. But in the Furman fight, what was different to the Furman fight to the Ugas, Pacquiao had that accuracy and sharpness. He was brilliant that night. But I did wonder, has he got enough in the tank to do that again? And he's been off for 2.5 years. Come on, man. People expect too much, even from Manny Pacquiao. But I can understand fans wanting him to continue, because I'm sad. I'm really sad that even if you beat Ugas, it's sad when anybody that you love watching, and obviously he's probably, for all of us, he's a part of our childhood, our upbringing. My first fight I watched of Pacquiao, I was 21 years of age. Yeah, 21. It was the Barrera fight, the first one. And I've followed him ever since, every fight I've watched. So you age watching him, you know, your whole life, half of your life, at least 20 years of it. So it's not easy to let go of that and all those great nights. And Pacquiao's really like, I'd say Pacquiao and Ricky Hatton are like the first two fighters that I stayed up, you know, till 4 o'clock in the morning to watch pay-per-view in America. Obviously us in the UK, we're on a different time span here. So we have to start really late, you know, practically have to stay up the whole night to watch these fights, and I always loved doing it, and I loved staying up the other night. So Pacquiao he didn't let anybody down. He was still like, he's a pit bull, man. He was still trying to knock Ugas out in the 12th round, but he just doesn't have it anymore. Like, he's not the same. He's just not the same. He's not the same in the Furman fight. He wasn't even the same as he was in the Jeff Horn fight. So the more you look back at his old fights, the more you'll notice the decline against Ugas. But even being almost 43, out of his prime, he still came close to winning that fight against Ugas, even though Ugas was the clear winner. It was one of those fights. It was close, and if you look at the scores on the cards, it was close. But a lot of people, without looking at points, you can watch a fight sometimes and you generally know who's won. And I knew that Pacquiao had lost it by the time they'd even announced it. I was gutted. But at the same time now, we can feel sad because we're going to miss Pacquiao because we love him, but we don't need to feel sad for him retiring because it's a happy ending. His career, for me, is the best career I've ever seen in boxing. It really is. I mean, Floyd Mayweather's career is unbelievable, but I personally prefer Pacquiao's. I know that Mayweather's undefeated, but I don't go by that. I find Pacquiao's one more exciting. It just, something special about it, and I think it's also because of him, you know, fighting all the Mexicans in the earlier days. And then there's different Pacquiao's, isn't there? There's like the Pacquiao at featherweight, at those famous fights of Morales and Barrera, and probably my favourite Pacquiao is the one that beat Miguel Cotto. That's probably my best Pacquiao fight. It's hard to say because I like many, but I'd probably say that he was just, it was amazing in that fight, and when he beat De La Hoya. But my personal favourite one, the one that I probably go back to most is the Cotto fight. So let me know in the box below what you guys is. But it's a tricky one, this one, because, you know, if Pacquiao does decide to have another fight, of course I'm going to watch it. Of course I'm going to support him. But at the same time, if you go back and you watch my earlier videos, I did say I didn't really want him to fight Crawford and Spence. I just felt like they were just too young, and you know, he's been going for so long, such a long time. Most of the people Pacquiao's beaten, they've been retired for donkey's years. He's still going. So even to achieve what he's done in his 40s is unbelievable. He's done it in his teens, in his 20s, in his 30s, and in his 40s. So I think it's definitely time to call it a day, and for him to go off and fulfill his dream, his calling, which is obviously in politics and being a public servant, or even going higher, becoming the president of the Philippines. He can do anything now. He can do so many things. He can do products. He can do motivational speaking. He's a superstar. He's an icon, and that's kind of saying it. You know, that's kind of saying it mildly. So I saw enough the other night against Ugas to make me realise, in my opinion, just my opinion, some might disagree, Pacquiao should call it a day. Because even if he got the decision against Ugas, he managed to squeeze out the victory. It was tough, man. These fights are tough. Even the one fight against Furman which just blew me away. Pacquiao kind of rolled back the years, but I don't like the shots he's taken personally, you know, and I have noticed that he wasn't as accurate. He didn't look the same against Ugas. A lot of the combination punches they didn't look coordinated, and that's not normal for a Manny Pacquiao. And I do feel, he said it himself, he did mention about his legs cramping, and I do believe him, but even so, it's science. It's time to call it a day, and he trained so hard. I honestly think he overtrained for the Ugas fight. I've never, like, the footage, personally, I can only think of one boxer that I've seen with my own eyes training as hard as Pacquiao does, and that's Mayweather. But I even feel like Pacquiao trained harder than Mayweather or everyone for the fight against, because he initially thought it was for Errol Spence, and he might have just burned out. So win or lose, really, I honestly think he should retire. Not just because he lost, because knowing Pacquiao, he could get a win in the next fight. He could knock the person out. He could grind out. But it's taken too much out of him, and it's a risk. And health, as he said, is the most important. And what's he going to prove? If he beat Sean Porter now, or anybody else, or he gave Errol Spence a close fight, win, lose or draw, what's it really going to add? He's already achieved so much. He's done what no one has ever done, and probably what no one will ever do. And he's done it in such a brilliant way. He's got, you know, he's just unique. He's probably he's probably in history one of the most respected, admired fighter by fighters. Forget fans and journalists and YouTubers. Boxers love Manny. You know, he's inspired everybody. So nothing to feel down about, but sad in the sense of an amazing career coming to an end. But like everything in life, everything good or bad, eventually does come to an end. But who knows? Listen, if he fights again, I will support Pacquiao regardless of the decision. But in my heart, there's that part of me as well, selfishly, like everyone else, that would like to see him again, maybe go again. But nah, I want him to call it a day and retire. I kind of wish he would have retired when he beat Furman. That would have been a great way to go out, but nonetheless. But yeah, all credit to Ugas, man. He's a gentleman. He deserved the victory. He boxed a great fight. And all credit to Pacquiao, because even at his age, man, the engine, the hunger, and he did hurt Ugas quite a few times, and you can see by his face. But yeah, that there was enough signs for me of decline. And I think the more Pacquiao goes on, the more evident that decline is going to be for everyone to see. And I just feel like it's time for him to walk away now. He's done it all. He doesn't have to prove anything. But if he does go on and he loses a couple more fights, which I hope he doesn't, it's not going to change him being a legend. And for me, he's the greatest. But obviously, you can make an argument that there's so many greats in boxing, but he's up there. He's in that room, that special box. He's the best of the best. He could have fought in any era and been competitive and won. So that's my thoughts on it, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in the box below. Become fearless.